The glow from my computer screen painted the workshop in blue shadows as I put the finishing touches on another corporate logo that would probably end up on a bathroom door somewhere. It was past midnight, and the house felt different, like someone had shifted all the furniture 3 inches to the left while I wasn't looking. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Megan's perfume still hung in the air from when she'd kissed my cheek goodbye 6 hours ago, claiming another emergency marketing brainstorm at the office. Funny thing about emergencies, they sure seem to require a lot of expensive perfume and that little black dress she'd bought last month. I'm Ben Keating, 38 years old and apparently dumber than a bag of hammers. At least, that's what I was starting to think as I heard Megan's BMW purr into our driveway like a satisfied cat. The front door opened with the careful precision of someone trying not to wake a sleeping spouse. Her heels clicked against the hardwood in that tippy-toe way that screams guilty conscience. "Ben, you still up?" Her voice carried that artificial sweetness she used when she was about to lie to my face. "Just finishing up some work," I called back, minimizing the browser window where I'd been tracking our joint credit card statements. Amazing how many client dinners happened at the Riverside Inn, a place that, according to their website, specialized in intimate dining experiences, and had exactly 0 corporate meeting rooms. Megan appeared in the doorway of my workshop, still looking like $1,000,000 in that black dress. Her lipstick was gone, her hair slightly mussed, and she had that glow that used to make my heart skip. Now it just made my stomach turn. "How was the brainstorm?" I asked, swiveling in my chair to face her. "Oh, you know how it is. Rebecca had this crazy idea about pivoting our social media strategy, and we just lost track of time." She was already backing toward the hallway. "I'm exhausted. Coming to bed soon?" "Sure thing, honey. Just need to save this file." She paused at the doorway, and for a second, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. Instead, she smiled that perfect smile that had hooked me 8 years ago. "Don't stay up too late. You know how grumpy you get without sleep." As her footsteps faded up the stairs, I turned back to my computer and opened a new browser tab. Time to do a little research on Rebecca's social media emergency. Funny thing about emergencies, they tend to leave digital footprints. Rebecca's Instagram showed her at home with her kids, posting about movie night and homemade popcorn. Timestamp, 3 hours ago. Either Rebecca had mastered the art of bilocation, or my wife was lying through her perfectly whitened teeth. The shower upstairs started running, and I heard Megan humming something that sounded suspiciously like a love song. Not one of our songs, mind you, something new. I pulled up our phone records on the family account, one of the perks of being the guy who handles all the bills. Lots of calls to a number I didn't recognize. The reverse lookup was easy enough. Jonah Price, attorney at law, specializing in corporate litigation and apparently married women. My phone buzzed with a text from Donna, our 70-year-old neighbor who smoked like a chimney and knew everyone's business better than the FBI. "Saw your wife with a fancy man in a blue suit tonight. Not the first time. Thought you should know." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Thanks, Donna. Appreciate you looking out." Her response came immediately. "That's what neighbors are for. Want me to keep an eye out?" "Please." I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a while, listening to Megan moving around upstairs. The shower had stopped, and now she was probably going through her elaborate skincare routine, the one that cost more than my truck payment. 8 years of marriage, 3 years of trying for kids that never came, 2 years of couples therapy that Megan claimed was helping so much, and now this. The funny thing about betrayal is how it makes you question everything. Had she been lying about the therapy too? About wanting kids? About loving me at all? I climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking like a countdown timer. The bedroom was dark, except for the glow from Megan's phone. She was lying on her side, facing away from me, thumbs moving rapidly across the screen. "Still working?" I asked, sliding into bed beside her. She jumped like I'd fired a gun. "Just checking tomorrow's schedule." "At 1 a.m.? You know how crazy things get." She set the phone face down on her nightstand and rolled toward me. "Sorry I was out so late. This new campaign is hurting me." "Must be some campaign." She kissed my cheek, and I caught a whiff of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. Something expensive and pretentious, like the kind of guy who'd drive a BMW and wear suits that cost more than most people's rent. "Love you," she whispered, already turning away. "Love you too," I lied back. I waited until her breathing evened out, then carefully reached for her phone. No passcode. She'd never bothered with one because we don't have secrets from each other. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. The text thread with JP told me everything I needed to know. Tonight was incredible. Same time next week? Can't wait. Ben suspects nothing. Good. I hate sneaking around, but you're worth it. Just a little longer, and then we can be together for real. I screenshot everything and emailed it to myself, then deleted the evidence from her sent folder. Amazing how trusting people can be when they think they're smarter than everyone else. Rolling onto my back, I stared at the ceiling and started planning. Megan wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that I didn't get through 2 tours in Afghanistan by being stupid or passive. The next morning, I was up before dawn, coffee brewing and breakfast cooking when Megan stumbled downstairs in her silk robe. "You're up early," she said, eyeing me suspiciously. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd make you breakfast before your big day." I slid a plate of eggs Benedict across the counter, her favorite, and something I only made for special occasions. "What's the occasion?" She took a bite, and I watched her face light up despite herself. "Can't a husband spoil his wife?" She smiled, and for a second she looked like the woman I'd married. Before the lies, before Jonah Price, before everything went to hell. "You're sweet, Ben. I'm sorry I've been so busy lately." "Don't worry about it. I know how important your career is." After she left for work, kissing me goodbye like a loving wife instead of a cheating liar, I walked out to get the newspaper. Donna was already on her porch, coffee mug in one hand, cigarette in the other. "Morning, Ben. Sleep well?" "Like a baby. Thanks again for the heads up last night." She took a long drag and studied me with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "What are you going to do about it?" "Haven't decided yet, but when I do, it's going to be memorable." Donna grinned, showing teeth stained yellow from decades of smoking. "Good. That girl's had it coming for a while now. Too fancy for her own good, if you ask me." "Nobody's too fancy for consequences, Donna." "Damn right. You need anything, and I mean anything. You just holler." I spent the morning at my design studio, a converted garage space downtown where I ran my freelance business. My assistant Tyler was already there, 19 years old and full of the kind of energy that made me feel ancient. "Boss, you look like hell. Rough night?" "Something like that. Tyler, how good are you with surveillance?" His eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Are we talking about following someone? Because I've been watching a lot of detective shows, and I think I could totally—" "Slow down, kid. I need someone tailed discreetly. Think you can handle it?" "Is this about Mrs. Keating?" I must have looked surprised because Tyler held up his hands defensively. "Sorry, man. It's just, she came by last week looking for you, and there was this guy in a fancy car waiting for her. Seemed weird." "What kind of car?" "Blue Tesla. Expensive-looking dude in a suit. They seemed friendly." So it had been going on for at least a week, probably longer. The betrayal stung, but the stupidity of it made me angry. Meeting her lover in broad daylight, in front of people who knew me. Either Megan thought I was completely oblivious, or she wanted to get caught. "Here's what we're going to do," I told Tyler, pulling up Jonah Price's law firm website on my computer. "This is our target. I want to know everything about him, where he lives, where he eats, where he gets his hair cut, everything." Tyler leaned over my shoulder, studying the professional headshot of a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne advertisement. "This the guy?" "This is the guy. He looks like a tool. Smart kid. Now let's see how smart he really is." The beauty of living in a mid-sized city is that everyone knows everyone else's business, especially when you know where to look. Old Man Rourke's bar was the kind of place where information flowed as freely as the cheap whiskey, and Rourke himself was better than Google when it came to local gossip. I found him behind the bar at 2 p.m., polishing glasses and watching a baseball game with the sound turned down. The place smelled like stale beer and broken dreams, my kind of atmosphere for what I had planned. "Ben Keating," he said without looking up. "Heard your wife's been keeping busy." News travels fast. Faster than you'd think. Jonah Price, right? Fancy lawyer with more money than sense? I slid onto a bar stool and nodded. "What do you know about him?" Rourke set down the glass and really looked at me for the first time. "You sure you want to know? Sometimes ignorance is bliss." Ignorance is what got me into this mess. He poured 2 whiskeys without being asked. "Jonah's been coming in here for about 6 months. Always with a different woman, married ones mostly. Guy's got a type. Successful, bored, looking for excitement. Charming. Gets worse. He likes to brag about his conquests. Calls them his projects. Apparently your wife is his latest renovation." The whiskey burned going down, but not as much as hearing my marriage described like a house flip. "Where does he live?" "Downtown, in those new condos by the river. Penthouse, naturally. Drives that blue Tesla like it's a rocket ship. Anything else I should know? Rourke leaned closer, lowering his voice even though we were the only ones in the bar. He's got a temper. Last month he got into it with another guy over a woman. Ended up with the guy's car getting keyed and his office windows broken. Sounds like a real prince. Just watch yourself, Ben. Guys like Price don't like losing, and they don't fight fair. I finished my drink and left a 20 on the bar. Thanks for the intel. Anytime. And Ben, when you make your move, make it count. Tyler was waiting for me back at the studio, practically bouncing with excitement. Boss, I followed him like you asked. This guy's routine is clockwork. Office until 6, gym until 7:30, then either home or out to dinner. Tonight he's meeting someone at Chez Laurent. Someone? Blonde woman in a red BMW. Ring any bells? My wife's car. My wife's favorite restaurant. My wife's favorite time to work late. Good work, Tyler. Now here's what we're going to do. The plan was simple. Document everything, gather evidence, and then systematically destroy both their reputations. I wasn't interested in violence or anything that would land me in jail. I wanted them to suffer the way I was suffering, publicly, humiliatingly, and completely. Tyler and I set up across the street from Chez Laurent with a camera and a clear view of the entrance. At exactly 7:45, Jonah's Tesla pulled up to the valet stand. He stepped out looking like a movie star. Perfectly styled hair, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that comes from never having faced real consequences. 5 minutes later, Megan arrived in her BMW, wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Red, tight, and definitely not something she'd wear to a business meeting. She practically floated into Jonah's arms, and they kissed like teenagers before heading inside. Got it all, Tyler whispered, clicking away with the camera. This is better than reality TV. Reality TV doesn't destroy your life. We waited for 2 hours, taking pictures of them through the restaurant window, holding hands across the table, sharing dessert, gazing into each other's eyes like they'd invented love. It would have been romantic if it wasn't my wife with another man. When they finally came out, Jonah had his hand on the small of Megan's back, guiding her toward his car. They were going back to his place, no doubt about it. Follow them? Tyler asked. No need. I know where they're going. Instead, I had Tyler drop me off at the downtown parking garage where Jonah kept his precious Tesla. The security cameras had blind spots. I'd checked earlier, and the night guard was more interested in his phone than his job. I found the car on the 3rd level, gleaming under the fluorescent lights like a blue metallic middle finger. Taking out my keys, I dragged them along the driver's side from bumper to bumper, leaving a deep scratch that would cost thousands to fix. But I wasn't done. I left a note under the windshield wiper. Enjoying your renovation project? A concerned neighbor. The next morning, Megan was unusually quiet over breakfast, checking her phone every few seconds with a worried expression. Everything okay? I asked, buttering my toast with exaggerated care. Fine, just work stuff. Her phone rang, and Jonah's name flashed on the screen. She declined the call, but it rang again immediately. You should probably take that, I said. Sounds important. She stepped into the hallway, but I could hear every word. What do you mean, vandalized? A note? No, I don't know how anyone could have found out. Ben doesn't suspect anything, I'm sure of it. I smiled to myself and took another bite of toast. Oh, Megan. I suspected everything. When she came back to the kitchen, her face was pale. Bad news? I asked. Someone vandalized Jonah's car last night. Probably just random city crime, but still. That's terrible. I hope he has good insurance. He's pretty upset about it. I bet he is. Those fancy cars aren't cheap to fix. She studied my face, looking for something. Guilt, knowledge, satisfaction. I kept my expression perfectly neutral, the picture of a concerned husband. Ben, you were here all night, right? Of course I was here. Where else would I be? It wasn't technically a lie. I had been here. I just hadn't stayed here. That afternoon, Tyler and I continued our surveillance operation. Jonah spent his lunch hour at the Tesla dealership, probably getting repair estimates and filing police reports. His perfect day had been ruined by a few scratches and a cryptic note, and I felt better than I had in weeks. What's next, boss? Tyler asked as we watched Jonah storm out of the dealership, his face red with anger. Next, we let them know they're being watched. Sometimes the fear of exposure is worse than exposure itself. I had Tyler follow Jonah to his office while I paid a visit to Megan's workplace. Her marketing firm occupied the top 2 floors of a glass building downtown, all open concepts and modern furniture designed to make everyone feel creative and important. Rebecca Martinez, Megan's supposed partner in last night's emergency brainstorm, was at her desk when I arrived with a box of pastries from the bakery down the street. "Ben? What a nice surprise," she said, accepting the box with genuine pleasure. "What brings you by?" "Just wanted to thank you for keeping Megan so busy lately. I know these late-night strategy sessions are tough, but she really appreciates having a dedicated partner." Rebecca's smile faltered. "Late-night sessions? Last night's brainstorm about the social media pivot? Megan said you two were here until almost midnight working on it." "Ben, I was home with my kids last night. We haven't had any late meetings this week." I let my face show just enough confusion and concern. "That's strange." She said, "Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe you should talk to Megan about where she really was." "Yeah, maybe I should." I left the pastries and Rebecca's growing suspicion behind, knowing that office gossip would do the rest of my work for me. By the end of the day, half the marketing department would know that Megan Keating was lying to her husband about working late. That evening, Megan came home in a foul mood, slamming doors and muttering under her breath. "Rough day?" I asked, looking up from my laptop. "Rebecca's being weird, Jonah's freaking out about his car, and I've got a headache that could eliminate a horse. Maybe you should take it easy tonight. Skip the emergency meetings and get some rest." She shot me a sharp look. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just that you've been working so hard lately, maybe you need a break." "I can't take a break, Ben. Some of us have demanding careers." The implication stung, that my freelance design work was somehow less important than her corporate job. It was the kind of casual cruelty that had been creeping into our conversations more often lately. "You're right," I said. "I don't know what it's like to have real responsibilities." She softened slightly, probably realizing she'd gone too far. "I didn't mean it like that." "Sure you did, but that's okay. I'm used to it." I went back to my laptop, pretending to work while actually planning the next phase of my campaign. Megan stood there for a moment, maybe waiting for me to argue or apologize or do something that would make her feel better about being a cheating, lying wife. Instead, I ignored her completely until she finally went upstairs. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Followed him to the gym. Guy works out like he's training for the Olympics. Also, he's definitely paranoid now. Kept looking over his shoulder." Good. Paranoia was exactly what I wanted. Let Jonah Price wonder who was watching him, who knew his secrets, who might be planning to destroy his perfect little life. Because I was just getting started. The annual Harbor Days Festival was the social event of the season in our little city. A weekend of food trucks, live music, and the kind of forced community spirit that made everyone pretend to like their neighbors. It was also the perfect place for a public confrontation. I'd spent the week setting up the pieces like a chess game. A few carefully worded texts from Megan's phone, sent while she was in the shower, had arranged for her friends Rachel and Lila to meet her at the festival. Another text, this one to Jonah, suggested a casual run-in at the beer garden around 2 p.m. The beauty of the plan was its simplicity. I wasn't going to expose them with some dramatic revelation. I was just going to let them expose themselves. "You sure about this, boss?" Tyler asked as we walked through the festival crowd. He was carrying a camera bag, pretending to be documenting the event for my design portfolio. "Trust me, kid. Sometimes the best revenge is just giving people enough rope to hang themselves." We positioned ourselves near the beer garden, close enough to watch but far enough away to avoid suspicion. The festival was in full swing. Families with strollers, teenagers trying to look cool, old-timers complaining about how much better things used to be. At exactly 2 p.m., Jonah appeared, looking like he was trying too hard to blend in with his designer jeans and polo shirt. He ordered a craft beer and found a table with a clear view of the main entrance, checking his phone every few seconds. "There's your boy," Tyler whispered, adjusting his camera lens. 5 minutes later, Megan arrived with Rachel and Lila in tow. Rachel was her work friend, a gossipy woman who thrived on drama and social media attention. Lila was worse, a wannabe influencer who documented every moment of her life for her modest but devoted following. I watched Megan scan the crowd, her eyes lighting up when she spotted Jonah. She said something to her friends and started walking toward his table, but Rachel grabbed her arm, pointing in a different direction. "What's she doing?" Tyler asked. "Getting cold feet? She knows this is risky." But Jonah had already seen her. He stood up, waved, and started walking over to their group. There was no backing out now. "Ladies," I heard him say as he approached. "What a pleasant surprise." Rachel and Lila exchanged glances. They'd met Jonah before. Megan had introduced him as a work contact. But seeing him here, approaching them like an old friend, clearly raised some questions. "Jonah," Megan said, her voice too bright, too loud. "I didn't expect to see you here." I love community events, he replied, sliding his arm around her waist in a gesture that was definitely not professional. That's when I made my move. Honey, I called out, pushing through the crowd with a big smile on my face. There you are. Megan's face went white. Jonah's arm dropped from her waist like she'd suddenly caught fire. Rachel and Lila looked back and forth between all of us, clearly sensing drama. Ben, Megan stammered. I thought you were working today. Finished early. Thought I'd surprise you. I walked right up to Jonah and extended my hand. I don't think we've been properly introduced. Ben Keating, Megan's husband. Jonah hesitated for just a moment too long before shaking my hand. Jonah Price. I work with Megan sometimes. Work with her? I squeezed his hand a little harder than necessary. That's funny. She's never mentioned you. We're collaborating on a new project, Megan said quickly. What kind of project? Rachel asked, her journalist instincts kicking in. It's complicated, Megan said. I bet it is, I replied, still smiling. Jonah, you look familiar. Don't you drive a blue Tesla? His jaw tightened. Yes. Shame about what happened to it. All those scratches. Must have cost a fortune to fix. How did you... Small city. Word gets around. I clapped him on the shoulder, maybe a little too hard. Well, it was great meeting you, Jonah. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Lila, ever the opportunist, had started recording with her phone, sensing that something dramatic was about to happen. Actually, Rachel said, her voice sharp with suspicion, isn't this the guy you've been having all those late meetings with? Megan shot her a warning look. Rachel, because I was just thinking. It's weird how you keep having these emergency work sessions, but when Ben came by the office, I had no idea what he was talking about. The crowd around us was starting to take notice. People were stopping their conversations, turning to watch our little drama unfold. Maybe we should discuss this somewhere private, Jonah suggested, looking around nervously. Why? I asked. We're all friends here, right? Just talking about work projects and late-night collaborations. Ben, Megan hissed, stop. Stop what? I'm just being friendly, getting to know your colleague. Lila was still filming, probably already composing the social media post that would make this moment go viral in our little community. You know what, Jonah? I continued, stepping closer to him. You seem like a smart guy. Successful, well-dressed, probably used to getting what you want. Ben, don't, Megan pleaded. But here's the thing about smart guys. They sometimes think they're smarter than everyone else. They think they can take whatever they want without consequences. Jonah's face was red now. Whether from anger or embarrassment, I couldn't tell. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm saying it straight out. You've been screwing my wife, and you both thought I was too stupid to notice. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just gone off. The crowd around us went completely silent, everyone straining to hear what would happen next. That's not... Megan started. Save it, I cut her off. I've seen the texts, the photos, the credit card statements. I know about the Riverside Inn, the late-night meetings, all of it. Lila's eyes were wide as she kept filming. This was better than reality TV, and she was getting it all on video. You want to know what's really funny? I continued, looking directly at Jonah. She told me you were just a work contact. Apparently you're not even good enough to be worth an honest confession. That's enough, Jonah said, his lawyer instincts finally kicking in. This is harassment. Harassment? I'm just having a conversation with my wife's business partner, although I guess business partner is one way to describe it. Ben, please, Megan was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Can we just go home and talk about this? Talk about what? Your renovation project? Because that's what Jonah calls you, by the way. His latest renovation. The crowd was eating it up. Phones were coming out, people were recording, and I could practically hear the gossip mill starting to churn. You're making a scene, Jonah said. Am I? Because it seems to me like you two made the scene. I'm just commenting on it. I turned to address the growing crowd of spectators. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Jonah Price, attorney at law and home wrecker extraordinaire, and my lovely wife Megan, who's been working very hard on some after-hours projects. Stop it, Megan screamed. Just stop. But I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone and showed the crowd one of the photos Tyler had taken, Megan and Jonah kissing outside the restaurant. Here they are, discussing their very important business collaboration. As you can see, it's a very hands-on kind of work. That's when Jonah finally snapped. He lunged at me, swinging wildly, but I'd been expecting it. I stepped aside and he stumbled past me, nearly falling into a group of teenagers who scattered like startled birds. Careful there, counselor, I said. Assault charges would look terrible on your bar review. Security guards were pushing through the crowd now, probably called by someone who thought this was getting out of hand. But the damage was done. Half the city had just watched Jonah Price try to attack a man whose wife he'd been sleeping with, and it was all on video. "Sir, we need you to calm down," one of the guards said to Jonah. "He's the one causing problems," Jonah protested, pointing at me. "Actually," the guard replied, "witnesses say you threw the first punch. We're going to need you to come with us." As the guards escorted Jonah away, I turned to Megan, who was standing there looking like her world had just collapsed. "Enjoy the festival, honey," I said. "I'm going home." I walked away through the crowd, leaving Megan to deal with the stares, the whispers, and the social media posts that were probably already going live. Tyler fell into step beside me, grinning from ear to ear. "Boss, that was incredible. You destroyed them both without breaking a sweat." "That was just the opening act, Tyler. The real show is just getting started." Behind us, I could hear Megan trying to explain herself to Rachel and Lila, but it was too late. The truth was out, and in a city this size, there was no taking it back. By tomorrow, everyone would know that Megan Keating was a cheater and Jonah Price was a homewrecker. Their reputations were in ruins, their relationship was exposed, and their perfect little secret was now the most entertaining gossip in town. And I was just getting warmed up. The fallout from the festival was everything I'd hoped for and more. By Sunday evening, Lila's video had been shared hundreds of times across social media platforms, and the local gossip network was running at full capacity. Megan had barricaded herself in our bedroom, coming out only to grab food and glare at me like I was the villain in this story. Monday morning brought the first real consequences. Megan's boss called an emergency meeting to discuss the situation, and Jonah's law firm was fielding calls from clients who'd seen the video and were questioning their attorney's judgment. I was at my studio, pretending to work on a logo design while actually monitoring the social media storm when Tyler burst through the door. "Boss, you need to see this," he said, pulling up a local news website on his phone. They picked up the story. The headline read, "Local attorney involved in public altercation over affair." Below it was a still frame from Lila's video, showing Jonah mid-swing while I stood calmly to the side. "This is better than Christmas," Tyler said, scrolling through the comments. "Listen to this one. Typical lawyer, thinks he can take whatever he wants. And this. Feel bad for the husband, but glad he stood up for himself." What about the negative ones? There aren't many, but some people are saying you should have handled it privately. Oh, and Jonah's firm released a statement. He showed me the screen. "Price, Williams, and Associates does not comment on the personal lives of our attorneys. Mr. Price remains a valued member of our team, and we expect this matter to be resolved quickly and professionally." Corporate speak for, "We're hoping this blows over," I said. "Think it will?" "Not if I can help it." That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, Jonah's voice came through, tight with barely controlled anger. "We need to talk." "Do we? I thought we covered everything at the festival." "Meet me at the parking garage on 5th Street, tonight, 9 p.m. "That sounds ominous, Jonah. Are you threatening me?" "I'm trying to resolve this situation like adults." "Adults don't usually arrange secret meetings in parking garages. That's more of a movie villain thing. Just be there." He hung up, and I stared at the phone for a moment. This was either incredibly stupid or incredibly predictable. Probably both. I called Tyler. "Remember how you said you wanted to help with surveillance?" "Yeah?" "How do you feel about being a backup camera operator?" The 5th Street parking garage was one of those brutalist concrete monuments that made the city look like it was designed by someone who hated happiness. At night, with half the lights burned out and shadows pooling in every corner, it was the perfect place for a confrontation between two men who'd run out of civilized options. I arrived at 8:45, with Tyler positioned across the street with a telephoto lens and strict instructions to call the police if things went sideways. I'd also left a detailed note at home explaining where I was going and why, just in case Jonah turned out to be more dangerous than stupid. Jonah's Tesla was parked on the 3rd level, and he was leaning against it like some kind of noir detective. The scratches I'd left had been repaired, but I could see where the paint didn't quite match. Expensive lesson in the consequences of poor choices. "You came," he said as I approached. "You sounded so desperate on the phone. How could I resist?" "This has gone far enough, Ben. You've made your point." "Have I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're still breathing, still employed, and still thinking you can charm your way out of the consequences of your actions." He pushed off from the car, and I could see the tension in his shoulders. This was a man who was used to winning, used to being in control, and finding himself on the losing side of a very public humiliation. "You destroyed my reputation," he said. "No, Jonah. You destroyed your reputation when you decided to sleep with my wife. I just made sure everyone knew about it. She was going to leave you anyway. Was she? Because she seems pretty committed to staying married now that her dirty little secret is front-page news. That hit home. Megan had indeed been trying to salvage our marriage ever since the festival, probably realizing that being the wronged wife was a lot more socially acceptable than being the divorced adulteress. What do you want? Jonah asked. Want? I don't want anything from you, Jonah. I want you to disappear from my life and my wife's life and go find some other marriage to destroy. And if I don't, then I keep escalating until you do. He took a step closer, and I could smell his expensive cologne mixed with sweat and desperation. You think you're so smart, don't you? Playing your little games, manipulating the situation. I think I'm smarter than a guy who meets his married girlfriend's husband in a deserted parking garage to make threats. I'm not making threats. Then what would you call this? A warning. He swung at me then, a wild haymaker that telegraphed itself from a mile away. I'd been expecting it since the moment he called, and I stepped aside easily, letting his momentum carry him past me. Careful, counselor, I said as he stumbled. That's assault, and this time there are no crowds to blame it on. He spun around, his face red with embarrassment and rage. You son of a... This time I didn't dodge. I caught his wrist as he swung, twisted it behind his back, and slammed him face first against his precious Tesla. 2 tours in Afghanistan had taught me a few things about hand-to-hand combat that law school probably didn't cover. Here's the thing, Jonah, I said, keeping him pinned against the car. You're used to fighting with words, with legal briefs and depositions and all that civilized stuff. But this isn't a courtroom, and I'm not impressed by your suit or your car or your law degree. Let me go, he gasped. Look, in a minute. First, we're going to have a little chat about boundaries. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder, the kind journalists use for interviews. I'd been recording since the moment I walked into the garage. Smile, Jonah. You're on candid camera, again. His struggles stopped. You're recording this? Every word, including the part where you threatened me and then tried to assault me. I'm thinking your law firm might be interested in hearing how their valued team member handles conflict resolution. I let him go, and he spun around, his hair messed up and his expensive shirt wrinkled. You're insane, he said. Maybe, but I'm also right. And in my experience, that's what really drives people crazy. I pulled a small gift box out of my jacket pocket and tossed it to him. He caught it reflexively. What's this? A little present. Open it. He lifted the lid to reveal a dog toy, a small rubber bone that I'd let my neighbor's dog chew on for a few days. It smelled exactly like you'd expect. A souvenir, I said. Something to remember me by. You're sick. I'm creative. There's a difference. I started walking toward the stairwell, then paused and looked back. Oh, and Jonah? If you ever come near my wife again, if you call her, text her, or even look in her direction, I'll make the festival incident look like a friendly chat. We clear? He didn't answer, just stood there holding the dog toy and looking like a man who'd finally realized he was in over his head. I'll take that as a yes, I said, and walked away. Tyler was waiting for me at street level, practically vibrating with excitement. Did you get it all? I asked. Every second. The audio's a little muffled, but you can definitely hear him threatening you and then the scuffle. Good. Make copies and store them somewhere safe. What's next? Next, we let Jonah think about what just happened. Sometimes the anticipation of consequences is worse than the consequences themselves. As we walked back to my truck, I felt a sense of satisfaction that I hadn't experienced in months. For the first time since discovering Megan's affair, I felt like I was in control of the situation instead of just reacting to it. But I wasn't done yet, not even close. Jonah Price was about to learn that there's a big difference between winning a legal argument and surviving a war of attrition with someone who has nothing left to lose. And I was just getting started. The next few days were deceptively quiet. Megan went to work, came home, and pretended everything was normal while avoiding eye contact and jumping every time her phone rang. Jonah, according to Tyler's continued surveillance, had become paranoid and jittery, constantly looking over his shoulder and checking his car for new damage. I was beginning to think they'd both learned their lesson when Megan made her next move. It started with a doctor's visit that I only found out about when the insurance company called to confirm coverage. Dr. Patricia Hendricks, a psychiatrist who specialized in trauma and domestic abuse. When I asked Megan about it, she claimed it was just stress counseling from work pressure. The second red flag was the sudden appearance of Lila at our house, armed with her ever-present camera and a sympathetic expression that looked about as genuine as a $3 bill. I'm just here to support Megan through this difficult time, she told me, setting up what looked suspiciously like an interview setup in our living room. What difficult time? I asked. The emotional abuse she's been suffering, Lila said, not even trying to hide her accusatory tone. That's when I realized what was happening. Megan wasn't trying to save our marriage or cut ties with Jonah. She was building a case, a narrative that would paint her as the victim and me as the abuser. The psychiatrist's visits were to establish a pattern of seeking help for domestic trauma. Lila's camera was there to document Megan's brave confession about her abusive marriage. It was actually brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of being the cheating wife who got caught, Megan would become the brave survivor who finally found the courage to expose her controlling, manipulative husband. The affair with Jonah would be reframed as her desperate attempt to find love and safety outside an abusive marriage. I had to admire the strategy, even as it made me want to put my fist through a wall. "This is interesting," I said to Lila, settling into my favorite chair like I was getting comfortable for a show. "What kind of emotional abuse are we talking about?" Lila looked at Megan, who took a shaky breath and launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. "The constant surveillance," she began, her voice trembling with practiced vulnerability. "The way you track my movements, check my phone, question everything I do. The way you isolate me from my friends and make me feel like I'm walking on eggshells in my own home." "Surveillance?" I repeated. "You mean like when I found out you were cheating on me?" "See?" Megan turned to Lila's camera. "He twists everything. He makes it seem like I'm the problem when he's the one who's been controlling and manipulative from the beginning." "And the public humiliation at the festival?" Lila prompted. "That was the worst part," Megan said, tears starting to flow. "He deliberately set up that confrontation to embarrass me in front of the entire community. He knew exactly what he was doing, destroying my reputation so I'd have nowhere else to go." It was a masterful performance. If I hadn't been the one living through the actual events, I might have been convinced myself. "What about Jonah?" I asked. "Where does he fit into this narrative of abuse?" Megan's tears came harder now. "Jonah was the first person who made me feel safe in years. He helped me realize that what you were doing to me wasn't normal, wasn't healthy. He gave me the courage to think about leaving. By sleeping with you. By showing me what real love looks like." Lila was eating it up, nodding sympathetically and making sure she got every tear, every tremor in Megan's voice. "This is going to make a powerful statement," Lila said. "So many women will relate to your story." That's when I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity of what they were trying to pull off was so outrageous that my only choice was to laugh or commit actual violence. "Something funny?" Lila asked, her tone icy. "Everything," I said, wiping tears from my eyes. "This whole performance. The victim act, the crocodile tears, the carefully crafted narrative. It's like watching a really bad movie." "This isn't a performance," Megan snapped, her mask slipping for just a moment. "This is my life." "Your life? Megan, your life is cheating on your husband with a lawyer who calls you his renovation project and then trying to frame that husband for abuse when you get caught." I stood up and walked over to the bookshelf, pulling out a small digital recorder, the same one I'd used in the parking garage with Jonah. "Lila, since you're so interested in documenting the truth, maybe you'd like to hear what your friend Megan really thinks about her marriage." I pressed play, and Megan's voice filled the room. "Ben suspects nothing. Just a little longer, and then we can be together for real. He's so pathetic, he actually believes I'm working late." The recording was from her phone calls with Jonah, captured by the voice-activated recorder I'd hidden in her car after the festival. Not exactly legal, but then again, neither was what she was trying to do to me. Megan's face went white. "You've been recording me?" "Just like you've been recording this little therapy session. The difference is, my recordings are actually true." Lila had stopped filming, probably realizing that her exclusive interview with a brave abuse survivor had just turned into evidence of a false accusation. "There's more," I continued, pulling out my phone. "Text messages, photos, credit card records, even a statement from Rebecca at your office confirming that you lied about working late. Should I keep going, or have you heard enough?" Megan was crying for real now, not the practiced tears of her performance, but the ugly, desperate sobs of someone whose carefully constructed lie had just collapsed. "You don't understand," she said. "I was going to leave you anyway. The marriage was over." "Then you should have left. Filed for divorce, split the assets, gone your separate way like an adult. Instead, you chose to lie, cheat, and then try to destroy my reputation to cover your tracks. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far. And now you're trying to convince the world that I'm an abuser because you got caught cheating. That's not just cruel, Megan. It's evil." Lila was packing up her camera equipment, clearly wanting to get as far away from this situation as possible. "I think I should go," she said. "Good idea," I replied. "And Lila, If any of that footage ends up online, I'll sue you for defamation so fast it'll make your head spin. I've got lawyers too, and unlike Jonah, mine specialize in media law. After Lila left, Megan and I sat in silence for a long time. The house felt different now, like a stage set after the play was over and the actors had gone home. What happens now? Megan asked finally. Now you call Dr. Hendricks and tell her you won't be needing her services anymore. Then you call Jonah and tell him your little scheme failed. Then you pack your things and get out of my house. This is my house too. Not anymore. I've already filed for divorce, and given the evidence I have of your affair and your attempt to frame me for abuse, I don't think you're going to get much in the settlement. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. When did you become so cold? The night I found out my wife was cheating on me and lying about it. The day she tried to destroy my reputation to cover her own tracks. Pick a moment, Megan. There were plenty of them. I loved you once. Maybe, but you loved yourself more. And that's what made all of this possible. She went upstairs to pack, and I called Tyler to let him know the final phase of the plan was about to begin. What's the final phase? He asked. Making sure everyone knows the truth before Megan and Jonah can spin their version of events. How do we do that? By giving them exactly what they want. A public confrontation, only this time we're going to control the narrative from the beginning. The Harbor Days Festival had been amateur hour. What I had planned next would be the professional production, complete with evidence, witnesses, and a finale that would leave no doubt about who the real villains were in this story. Megan Keating and Jonah Price had played their last card and lost. Now it was time to collect my winnings. The beauty of small cities is that news travels fast, but it also gets distorted in the telling. By Wednesday morning, there were at least 3 different versions of what had happened between Megan and me circulating through the gossip network. Some painted me as a controlling husband who'd driven his wife to seek comfort elsewhere. Others portrayed Megan as a victim of domestic abuse who'd finally found the courage to speak out. I needed to set the record straight, and I needed to do it in a way that would be impossible to spin or misinterpret. The solution came to me while I was having coffee at Rourke's bar, listening to the old-timers debate whether I was a hero or a villain. Problem is, Old Man Rourke said, wiping down glasses with practiced efficiency, nobody knows what really happened. Everyone's got their version, but nobody's got the facts. What if they did have the facts? I asked. Then this whole thing would be over in about 5 minutes. That afternoon, I called a meeting, not a secret rendezvous in a parking garage or a carefully staged confrontation at a festival. A real meeting, with witnesses, recording equipment, and enough evidence to bury any remaining doubts about what had really happened. The location was the community center's main conference room, the same place where the city council met every month and local organizations held their annual meetings. Official, public, and impossible to dismiss as some kind of private vendetta. I sent formal invitations, actual printed invitations like this was a wedding or a graduation party. The guest list included Megan, Jonah, their friends and colleagues, my friends and neighbors, and anyone else who'd been spreading gossip about the situation. The invitation was simple. Ben Keating requests your presence at a presentation of facts regarding recent events. Light refreshments will be provided. Tyler thought I'd lost my mind. Boss, this is either brilliant or completely insane. Why can't it be both? Most people probably came out of curiosity more than anything else. In a city where the biggest entertainment was usually the high school football games, a public airing of a messy divorce was irresistible. I arrived early to set up the presentation. Tyler had helped me put together a PowerPoint that would have made my old Army briefing officers proud, clear, concise, and devastating in its thoroughness. Slide 1, Timeline of Megan's affair, complete with credit card receipts, text message timestamps, and photographic evidence. Slide 2, Comparison of Megan's claimed whereabouts versus her actual locations, cross-referenced with her friends' social media posts. Slide 3, Audio recordings of her conversations with Jonah, including the parts where they discussed how pathetic and clueless I was. Slide 4, Documentation of her attempt to frame me for domestic abuse, including the psychiatrist appointments and the staged interview with Lila. Slide 5, Evidence of Jonah's pattern of targeting married women, including testimonies from 2 other wives who'd been approached by him in the past year. By 7 p.m., the room was packed. Megan sat in the front row, her face pale but defiant. Jonah was conspicuously absent, probably on the advice of his lawyer, who'd undoubtedly told him that showing up would be professional suicide. I started with a simple statement. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Over the past few weeks, there's been a lot of speculation about what happened to my marriage and why. Tonight, I'm going to show you exactly what happened, using evidence that speaks for itself. What followed was the most thorough public humiliation I'd ever witnessed, and I was the one delivering it. Every lie Megan had told, every manipulation she'd attempted, every cruel thing she'd said about me behind my back. All of it laid out in excruciating detail for everyone to see. The audience was silent throughout the presentation. Even the old-timers who usually couldn't shut up were hanging on every word. When I played the recording of Megan calling me pathetic and too stupid to figure it out, I heard someone in the back row gasp. When I showed the text messages where she and Jonah laughed about my pathetic attempts to be romantic, Donna from next door actually hissed like an angry cat. But the real destroyer was the final slide, a recording of Megan and Lila planning the fake abuse story, complete with discussions of how to make the bruises look realistic and which psychiatrist would be most likely to support their narrative. The plan was simple, I explained to the horrified audience. Frame me for domestic abuse, use that as grounds for divorce, and walk away with half of everything while painting herself as a brave survivor. Meanwhile, Jonah would be waiting in the wings, ready to play the role of the knight in shining armor who saved her from her terrible husband. When the presentation ended, the room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. Then, slowly, people started to react. Rachel, Megan's former best friend, stood up and walked out without a word. Several other people followed, but not before shooting disgusted looks at Megan. Old Man Rourke was the first to speak. "Well, I'll be damned. That's the most thorough ass-kicking I've ever seen, and nobody even threw a punch." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking some of the tension. Megan finally found her voice. "This is harassment," she said, but her heart wasn't in it. "You had no right to record private conversations." "Actually," I replied, "I had every right to record conversations in my own car and my own house. What I didn't have a right to was being lied to, cheated on, and framed for domestic abuse." You never what, Megan? Never cheated? Never lied? Never tried to destroy my reputation to cover your own tracks? Because I've got recordings that say otherwise." She looked around the room, probably hoping to see some sympathetic faces, but found only disgust and disappointment. Even Lila, who'd been complicit in the fake abuse scheme, was edging toward the exit. "I think we've heard enough," Donna said, standing up with the authority of someone who'd lived in this city for 70 years and knew where all the bodies were buried. "Megan Keating, you should be ashamed of yourself. And that lawyer friend of yours, he's lucky he didn't show his face here tonight." Murmurs of agreement filled the room. The court of public opinion had reached its verdict, and it wasn't in Megan's favor. As people filed out, many stopped to shake my hand or pat me on the shoulder. Tyler was grinning like he'd just won the lottery. "Boss, that was incredible. You didn't just win, you dominated." "It's not about winning, Tyler. It's about the truth." "What's the difference?" "The truth lasts longer." By the next morning, word had spread throughout the entire city. Megan's marketing firm announced that she'd decided to pursue other opportunities. Corporate speak for, "We fired her ass before she could damage our reputation any further." Jonah's law firm was less diplomatic, simply stating that he was no longer associated with the practice. I found out later that Jonah had left town entirely, taking a job with a firm in another state where nobody knew about his hobby of seducing married women. Megan moved in with her sister in Portland, probably hoping to rebuild her life somewhere that people didn't know her as the woman who tried to frame her husband for domestic abuse. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Given the evidence of her affair and her attempted fraud, Megan got exactly what she deserved: nothing. The house, the business, the savings account, even her precious BMW. All of it stayed with me. I was at Rourke's bar 6 months later, celebrating the completion of my biggest design contract ever, when Tyler brought up the whole mess. "Ever regret how it all went down?" he asked. "Which part? Exposing the affair, stopping the fraud, or making sure everyone knew the truth?" "All of it, the whole revenge thing." I thought about it for a moment, sipping my whiskey and watching the evening news on the bar's ancient television. "You know what I regret, Tyler? I regret trusting someone who didn't deserve it. I regret wasting 8 years on a woman who saw me as nothing more than a meal ticket and a cover story. I regret not seeing through her act sooner. But the revenge part? The revenge part was justice. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Justice is making sure the truth comes out and the guilty parties face consequences for their actions. Revenge is just making people suffer because you're angry." "So which one was it?" I finished my whiskey and set the glass down on the bar. "It was justice, Tyler. But I'll admit, it felt a hell of a lot like revenge." Outside, the city was settling into its evening rhythm. Families were having dinner, kids were doing homework, and married couples were probably having the same fights they'd been having for years. Normal life, with all its ordinary dramas and small betrayals. But not for me. I was free. Free from lies, free from manipulation, free from a woman who'd tried to destroy me to cover her own sins. I walked home to my house now, and poured myself another drink. The place felt different without Megan's presence, bigger somehow, like I could finally breathe again. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You destroyed my life." I recognized the number. It was Megan's new cell phone. She'd been sending me messages like this for weeks, alternating between threats and pleas for forgiveness. I typed back, "No, Megan, you destroyed your own life. I just made sure everyone knew about it." Her response came immediately. "I hope you're happy." I looked around my quiet house, thought about my thriving business, remembered the respect I'd earned from my community by standing up for myself and telling the truth. "I am," I typed back. For the first time in years, I actually am. Then I blocked her number, deleted the conversation, and poured myself one final drink. Outside, the city slept peacefully, unaware that justice had been served and the truth had won out over lies and manipulation. I raised my glass in a toast to myself, to Tyler, to Old Man Rourke, to Donna, and to everyone else who'd stood by me when the chips were down. To the truth, I said to my empty house, and to the people brave enough to tell it. The house didn't answer back, but that was okay. I'd had enough of lies and false promises to last a lifetime. From now on, I was living in the truth, and the truth, as it turned out, was a pretty comfortable place to be.